Hi and welcome to the first video in the series or playlist called Iteration, which is Python loops to you and me. If you're familiar with these monster videos already, you will notice that this one is a little bit different. So I started to do the same type of thing as I did for the condition and selection playlist, and then I realized that for this series I'd need to put together some type of upfront scene setting video, because I need to explain a few things before we start. I'm also going to address the theory part of this in the third of these videos rather than the first video, which is what I did with the condition and selection series. So if you're completely unfamiliar with loops, we can get one type of loop in the bag first, and then I think the theory will be a little bit more meaningful for you if we come to that afterwards, after we've done the first type of loop. So let's start off with some useful thinking, I hope, before we make a start on iteration. Iteration, by the way, is the correct technical term for what everyone else says, which is loops. Now, if you're familiar with condition and selection, so that's if-else statements for the most part, and especially if you've been using these monster videos, you will be aware of the core characteristics of if, elif, and else statements. Python loops share all of these in common as well. So both structures require a colon and mandatory indentation. Both require a condition to be evaluated as true or false, each of which results in different consequences in the code. Both are structured in blocks of code, and both can accommodate nested structures. So nested loops, as well as we had nested if statements when we were looking at the condition and selection videos. So the idea is that if you are stronger or more confident with condition and selection than, say, loops, then using the same type of thinking about how to structure and define your code can be applied to Python loops as well. Of course, this works the other way around. So if you're more confident with loops, well, then you can apply the same type of thinking when you come to look at if-else and if-elif-else statements as well. In fact, it goes a little bit further than that. Because there is one more major structure which you will come across in your programming, okay, which uses its own type of syntax and shares some of the common characteristics of condition, selection, and loops. And this is the creation of subroutines, so functions and procedures, as we like to call them. And you'll come across these in class, and when you come to look at the subroutines playlist in this series of videos as well. So subroutines also require a colon and mandatory indentation. They are also structured in blocks of code, and just like our other two structures, they can accommodate nested versions of themselves as well.
Power off.
So a couple of things in terms of expectations. Now, typically when students get to iteration on the course and they cover that topic, the scope of programming possibilities becomes larger because condition, selection, and iteration combined into the same code enables us to address more complex and often more interesting challenges. So from these videos onwards, you'll be looking at coding examples that are likely to be a little bit more complex, but certainly more interesting, and with a broader array of the features that you should already be familiar with. Now, as I said earlier, I will address the theory behind iteration in video 3. Okay, you can see that on the list of videos that we will be covering off, or topics that we'll be covering off. In the next playlist on Python lists, we will be making even more use of iteration and selection a lot. So your learning and practice of condition, selection, and iteration will extend into future playlists as well. Okay, so I will see you in the next video where we will do some Python examples of the basic while loop. See you there.